right, welcome into another edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm Bill Reiter. He's Brad Botkin. And Brad, I've decided that I'm allergic to basketball. I don't know. I've been sick for like 5 weeks, dude. No, I'm allergic to my nephew.
Yeah.
My newborn.
Yeah. Sound like you're allergic to your family.
Yeah, I'm allergic to my namesake.
Not your immediate family. It's always extended.
All right.
In you.
My 3-month-old nephew, who's named after me, is the sweetest kid. He's also sick all the time, and I got to stop visiting him in Denver. Victor Wembanyama. So this news broke yesterday. It broke, I think, as the pod was coming to a close. Everyone knows the details. Blood clots, Wembanyama's shoulder, shut down for the year, uncertainty, but I suppose maybe sort of, Brad, optimism on what the future holds, although we don't really know where it's going to be. The medical reality could be somewhere between this is a one-off and the worst-case scenario could. We've seen this before with guys like Chris Bosh. Could be much, much more severe. Initial reactions to the shocker and the uncertainty that surrounds what's up with Wemby now.
Yeah, just shocking. I mean, you get the alert that Wembanyama has blood clots, and that just sounds scary, like right up front, because we all know about Chris Bosh, and there's been a few other guys, Anderson Varejao. It's always taller guys are usually, and then you start to read about how they're more susceptible because of their height and all the distance that the blood has to travel and all the sitting that they do on airplanes. And so, yeah, you just kind of hope that this isn't going to be a recurring thing. It sounds like initially from listening to a lot of the doctors that I was listening to around the internet yesterday, it sounds like they caught it pretty soon or pretty early, and they can kind of take care of this in an isolated situation. It's certainly going to be something that they monitor with his height and all those things I just talked about. They're going to monitor this, and you just kind of have to hope that it doesn't keep happening. But he's done for the year, and from a basketball perspective, I don't know that it's the absolute worst thing for the Spurs.
So I don't know. We don't know. Nobody knows what's going to become of Wembanyama. Right? We're waiting for more information medically. I will tell a story though that why it kind of hit home for me. As you know, Brad, I covered the Heat, started in 2010 for a while. And as I guess is true now, LeBron wasn't the biggest fan of my coverage at the time. And the Heat organization, who I have a ton of respect for, but if you're not in a good spot with their guys, they come at you really hard. That was just a pretty intense coverage situation. And the two guys who were good to me were Eric Spoelstra and Chris Bosh. Bosh is just a sweet guy, a nice guy. And fast forward after I was covering that team in 10-11, he was at the 2016 All-Star game. I was working with a TV crew, and we were supposed to snag interviews, and we hadn't set any up, and all the guys were going home, and Bosh was kind enough in the parking lot, on the way to the parking lot, to like give me 10 minutes and just get on camera, talk. We had this long conversation about the All-Star game, and that was the last time he ever played basketball because he went home, and those blood clots popped up again, and he never played hoops again. And it's always kind of stuck with me just how that career just was over. And hopefully that's not the case for Wembanyama, but it's hard for me my mind not to go there, Brad, because Wembanyama is such a freak of nature. He is such at the risk of sounding corny, a gift to basketball. The idea of what he can be 3 or 4 or 5 years from now is astounding. He's almost too good to be true. And you're right. Like, I don't think it impacts this season that much. There are 3 games, whatever it is, out of the play-in, and it's the Suns and the Warriors, I think, fighting for that final spot right now. It gives them a chance maybe to get a better draft pick. For me, the big takeaway is there's a non-zero percentage chance, and hopefully it's 0.5% and not higher, that this impacts this guy's career permanently. That is, to me, the scariest thing that is possible for the next 10 years of the NBA.
It is. It's because anytime you hear about these injuries that aren't within the normal realm of NBA injuries, it's not like somebody's knee or back or shoulder or wrist or whatever. Like you hear about like somebody's heart or, like the thing that happened with Bronny or blood clots. It's so outside the normal NBA or any sports injury that you kind of immediately just dismiss the basketball part of it. And you start to wonder, like, is this guy's health okay? And then, once you don't have to leap very far from that to say because like you say about Bosch, that at least he was at the end of his career. I mean, God forbid if this were to be something that starts impacting Wemby before he even gets started. Let's hope it's not that. Brandon Ingram had this. He was out for, I think, 6 or 7 months and has never had it happen again. Again, let's just hope that they did catch it early.
Yeah, Ingram's a good one. Yeah,
good thing they paid attention to. He was feeling fatigued. It's funny. He had a blood clot. He had no energy, he says, and he was the only one trying in the All-Star game. Side note, but the other guys maybe could put out some effort if the guy with the blood clot is trying.
Let's presume that he's going to play again and that he's going to be okay. And then, as you said, it's like Ingram and a host of other athletes where they catch it and they treat it, and it's not the dire situation that it is for Chris Bosh. I don't think it impacts in a major way this season. And you and the producer had a text string yesterday, and I was like, I'm out on the nonsense. But I will say this as like a point at least. It is a lost moment for the Spurs to have played some meaningful basketball with Wemby at the helm. Not that they can't do that next year and the year after. Hopefully he's around. But I do think that the benefit, if you assume he's going to play for the next 10 or 15 years, and this is not the worst case scenario, it is unfortunate for that organization that they don't have the chance for him, and I guess Castle to a lesser degree, but I think really Wembanyama to just play competitive basketball games in February, March, and April, come what may, whether they made the plan or not, because you can't simulate those situations. And I was looking forward to Wembanyama beginning that process of learning how to win and just learning how to play games that actually mean something.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, it was going to be fun to see if they could make a push for the final play-in spot. But it's just so early. And, I just think big picture, he has gotten to play meaningful basketball this year. Now, stretch run basketball, fighting for a spot is different. And he was going to get some reps with Fox, and, but Fox is another part of this. He's got a finger injury, and that might require surgery. And it's like, maybe you can move that up and get him fully right and just take him out, get the surgery if he needs that, or even just the time off, get everything, all the ducks in a row for next season. I mean, listen, you're obviously building something here with Wemby and Fox. They're 10th right now in lottery odds. They could get up to 6th or 7th. The Hawks got the first pick last year with like, what was it, a 3% chance? The way that the lottery odds have smoothed, and if you get a top 5 or 6 pick in this draft, even if it's not Cooper Flag, if you add that to Stephon Castle and Wembanyama and Fox, because they are going to probably need another player somewhere. It's not just going to be Fox and Wemby, and see how Castle develops, and Devin Vassell, they have good players, but to be like the best team in the league, somewhere along the line, another player's gonna have to come. If they can stumble into that in this draft, you never want to start talking about tanking, but if ever you had an opening to do so, Victor Wembanyama goes out with a blood clot. People are already, from a narrative standpoint, have already dismissed this season for the Spurs the rest of the way. There's an opening here.
I think you're 100% right, and I will say tank. I mean, sometimes you need to tank, and I think I brought this up with you, but maybe it was with John Gonzalez, who's here a bunch of times a week. I can't remember. I was talking to a couple scouts during the trade deadline like a few weeks ago, and they brought up the draft, and they both of them, and these are guys that go and actually watch college players and do the scouting, right, and put the reports in. And their contention, their certainty is that while Cooper Flag will be the number 1 pick in the draft, that there are multiple guys who are not as sure a thing, but that are higher ceiling. And there's a view that there are going to be 2 or 3 or 4 guys in this draft that'll be taken in the lottery. We don't know who they all are outside of the kid at Duke, who are going to be potentially extraordinary. It is a really good draft. So I'm with you, man. You get the 7th pick, you get the 5th pick, you get the 3rd pick. If you're drafting properly and you have a little bit of luck, as I understand it from guys that actually scout, there are some really good players, even if you're not at number 1. Speaking of tanking, and speaking of whether or not it's time to just give up the ghost on this season, Joel Embiid said something I thought pretty candid and pretty interesting, and it begs some questions about what the Sixers should be doing, and we will get into that next here on Beyond the Arc.
We dig it. to you. The Pro Volleyball Federation on CBS and streaming live on Paramount+.
All right, welcome back into Beyond the Arc. I'm Bill Reiter. He's Brad Bach. And before we get to this Embiid thing, I meant to ask you this about Wemby. Does it reinforce or change his injury, Brad? Because he obviously was going to be Defensive Player of the Year. For people that bet on it, he was, I think, minus 2,000. I mean, he was a stone-cold lock. Now he's not going to win because he's not going to hit the 65-game minimum threshold. Does it alter or enforce whatever your view is or was on that rule for awards?
No, I talked about this with Brendan Haywood yesterday, a couple of days ago when I was on the show in there in the studio, and the players brought this on themselves. I keep hearing about this gripe about the 65 game issue, and we talked about it because Kevin Durant was complaining that everybody loves to complain about the NBA, and it's like, well, people have things to complain about. It's your fault. Everybody's doesn't like the All-Star game because nobody tries. It's your fault that people are starting to get disenfranchised with guys sitting out and all these types of things. So, I mean, look, it was an extreme measure that Adam Silver had to take because guys were taking advantage of not playing. So I have absolutely no problem with the 65 game rule. You could arbitrarily say, should it be 60 or, tinker with it a couple of games, but the idea of the rule is because the players forced it. If you don't want to play,
I agree.
Any lingering issue is going to keep you out, or even things you're making up. You're getting paid tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to play basketball. It's disgusting. And I just can't stand listening to Steve Kerr anymore talking about the data and injury prevention. And I know there's validity to it at some, on some level.
I mean,
also too, you play basketball, you get hurt, happen, you're tired. I just trying to plan your whole life to only eat organic, and then you get hit by a bus. It's just I think it's overkill, and it's at the expense of the regular season product.
Don't eat all organic is the more. Lastly, Eric Casillas said something on his show yesterday on CBS Sports HQ that I thought was right on. I thought of it this way: if in any sporting event, All-Star game included, the participants don't care. Don't get mad at me when I don't care, right? If the participants don't care about it, then I'm allowed to complain that I don't care about it, and that isn't my fault. It's the fault of the people that are actually competing. Joel Embiid doesn't compete a lot, although that's normally because of injury and not because of any sort of insouciance. And it's been, I don't know, man, lost season, brutal season for the Sixers in so many ways. Embiid has obviously not played a lot of games. He has talked about being banged up. There have been questions about whether or not his latest niggles or injury or whatever it is should lead to him being shut down. And after the game yesterday, and we'll include the reporter's question here, I think, there was a pretty, I thought, candid response from Embiid that I think is worth watching and leading to a conversation about whether it's time to shut this guy down.
So setting aside being healthy enough just to play, are there specific things that you feel like you can't do or don't trust your knee enough to do right now that you've relied on in the past?
Oh, I don't know. I'm sure you can figure it out. The way I was playing a year ago, it's not the way I'm playing right now, and it sucks. But I believe I just probably need, to fix the problem, and then I'll be back at that level. But it's hard to have the trust when you're not yourself. And yeah, I mean, not as dominant as I was a couple months ago. And but that doesn't mean I still can't have a lot of impact on the game. It's just me being out there, I think helps a lot. Just my presence, ability to track double teams, getting guys more shots. But my dominant self, I get that. No, it's just tough because you can do so much more. But when it's just Well, there's no excuses. It's just the way it is. Just gotta keep finding ways to, figure it out and get better.
I mean, short of grabbing Daryl Morey by the lapels, shaking him, and screaming, "Shut me down," I don't, Brad, I don't know what more Embiid can do to communicate that he just sit the guy. What? And it's not as if Philly is in the third slot in the Eastern Conference. They are on the wrong side of the play-in battle right now. They've lost, 6 games in a row. Paul George just doesn't show up even when he's there sometimes. Why play this guy? Why not just shut it down?
This is the definition of sending good money after bad. I mean, they're chasing their tail on this thing. This season's over. They're 5 games behind the 9 seed. They're 1 back of the 10 seed. So they're not making up 5 games. The best they can do, you're going to tell me you're going to run out Joel Embiid when he needs surgery. You're going to run out Paul George when he's having to take injections in his finger like you would do for a Game 7 playoff game in January. Just to get the 10 seed, to have to win 2 play-in games, to then play Cleveland in the first round. This season's over. It's over. And they need to let Joel Embiid go get the surgery that he needs. And let's be clear, any idea that Joel Embiid's going to get this surgery and then come back next year and be all good, chances are there'll be something else. The Paul George signing was a disaster. I'd be looking into trades for both of them. But if we're keeping it within the context of this season, there's no question. We just talked about the Spurs and their opportunity. Shut this thing down. They have a top 6 protected pick. If they can somehow land in the top 6, they can keep it from conveying to OKC and keep it in a stacked draft. There is absolutely no justification for continuing to try and win basketball games at the expense of their best players playing injured. It's over.
Is this the most disappointing team in the NBA?
Yes, no question. Now, you can say it's out of their control, it's injuries, but yeah, no question. I mean, the Phoenix Suns are up there. The Phoenix Suns are up there because they're not going down on account of injuries so much. But yeah, I mean, God, everyone was like, oh my God, here come the Sixers. They're going to be up there with Milwaukee and New York and Cleveland and Boston, and they're going for a title. They can't, and they aren't even that good when these guys play. Now, to be fair, they haven't got that much time together, and none of them are healthy outside of Maxey. So, but still, it's like anytime all 3 of them are in the lineup, it feels like we can finally see, and they're still terrible. Shut it down. Shut it down.
I would put the Timberwolves in that list too, but I think my power rankings of most disappointing teams would start with Philly. And the other thing that you have to start, so we talked about Wembanyama, and there's the worry, not the certainty, but you entertain the fear that this Wemby issue could be longer lasting than just this season. We don't know. We're waiting to find out. We're waiting to hear. We'll see. I think there's much more reason to entertain the fear that Joel Embiid is never going to make a conference finals. I mean, there is no guarantee the guy is going to be healthy again, that he's going to be on the right basketball team again. I mean, maybe he'll force his way out at some point, but I feel like we're at the sort of midway or the end point of a film that it turns out is about the most talented player, at least of his generation, maybe this century, to amount to absolutely nothing in terms of playoff success. Yeah. He's got his MVP. He's a massive talent. And it's such a weird journey because he comes into the draft out of Kansas as the next Elijah Wan. I mean, everybody and their brother was singing this guy's praises. He falls to 3, I think, because of injury issue, if I'm remembering right. Sam Hinkie drafts him, right? Here's all this value, and he misses time, obviously, out the gate. And then he gets healthy-ish. He plays at a pretty high level. Sometimes he wins an MVP a couple years ago. Wasn't that long ago, the guy was scoring 70 points in games. And now, and maybe I'm just being Chicken Little, Brad. I'm just presuming the sky is falling. But it's hard to see. If this guy can't be healthy now, and he's getting older, and he doesn't have a team around him that's likely to be effective or successful unless he plays 60 or 65 games, I mean, I'm not sure it's just the end of – I shut him down, and I'm with you. You shut him down, maybe you can get a top 6 pick. The ping pong balls pop the right way. But there's also a world where I don't know we ever have a conversation about Joel Embiid playing basketball in June, ever.
Well, that's why I just said I would look into trading him. I don't even know what kind of value he'd have on his contract. But, yeah, I'm with you. The Sixers thing as a whole, just the whole process, it's been, if we talk about the most disappointing teams, it's not just this year. I mean, Ben Simmons is one of the all-time falls from grace in sports history.
Yes.
Joel Embiid, only because of all the things that have gone wrong with this organization does Joel Embiid seem like the stable piece. It seems like because Ben Simmons went to hell and they had to get rid of him, and Markelle Fultz had an even further fall than Simmons. All these crazy things have happened. They draft
Harden thing was ugly.
And Dario
the divorce was Harden.
And the whole thing with Colangelo. The whole thing has been such a mess that only in that situation can Joel Embiid seem like the steady one. Like he stuck around through it all. In any other situation, he's the disappointment. He can't stay healthy. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. He's not a player to trust and build around. So this whole Sixers thing, man, I mean, honestly, if you would have written this as a movie, it'd be like, this would never happen. You trade Jason Tatum and another first round pick to get Markelle Fultz, the top pick, and he forgets how to shoot. It becomes this whole psychological thing. Ben Simmons goes from the next Magic Johnson to literally done, irrelevant, gone. Like Joel Embiid can't stay healthy. Saric, Okafor, all these guys they drafted, Nerlens Noel, the Colangelo meltdown. I mean, this has been you would never believe it if you wrote it as a fictional story. It's insane.
Almost all of what you cited from previous regimes, plural. How much grace do we give Nick Nurse and Daryl Morey, and for how long, based on how things are going? Because I like both those guys a lot. And I know Daryl. I think Daryl signed a contract extension not this past December, but the December before, and he's well regarded, and I like him. I mean, he brought in he tore down an entire team to bring in basically all new teammates. He went with Paul George. It was a disaster. I'm not sure those guys are spared. Maybe another year, but I'm not sure that they should be spared the consequences of this for at least beyond next year.
Nurse, for me, like last year, I liked the things he was doing with Embiid. Like he was more mobile, he was more active as a facilitator up high. I think they got more pace into their offense. So, like basketball wise, I liked what Nurse was doing.
He's a good coach.
And Daryl Morey, I think at this point it was a desperate move to get Paul George. If he's being honest, it's like this isn't great with Embiid, but we've got to take a shot here. It's sort of like when Elton Brand signed Tobias Harris. It's like they traded for him. We're going to lose Jimmy Butler. You end up making this desperate move because you think you're right there and you can't justify not trying to move forward. So it was a desperate play to go after Paul George for that much money at his age and for that length of a contract.
For now, that was and why comment that PG contract is awful. Oh my God. It's that PG contract is for today, not for 2 years from now.
I know. It was going to be the only way it was going to work was if like year one, it like really paid off. There was always going to be diminishing returns on it. But I just think it was, he's kind of desperate. And let's not forget, he also did everything he could do to get James Harden. So yes, it was a way to get Ben Simmons off the team, but like Daryl Morey's just kind of he did it with Westbrook in Houston. And it's like, just kind of this huge swing, huge name.
Yep.
And yeah, that hasn't panned out.
Yeah. I think if this continues next year, it's just a total tear down, trade everybody, fire everybody, start over. I mean, I think that's part of
Bill, the problem is the reason that the Sixers have these guys is nobody. What are you going to trade Paul George for?
No, Paul George is not trading, but I think you could trade Embiid. I think you could. It depends on his health, right? It depends.
Yeah, but that's the problem. If he comes back with decent health, they're not going to want to trade him. It's like he kind of has to be down and out for them to. I don't know. I mean, his contract it's huge. I got to see how many years he has left, but you're not going to get a ton for Joel Embiid. There's no more Luka Doncic accidents out there for injury-prone Anthony. No one's making that mistake with Joel Embiid.
What a hot match. All right, we're going to close out the show with Team of the Night when we come back in a moment here on Beyond the Arc.
I feel home when I see the faces that remember my own. When I'm with my friends, I feel home.
All right, we're back Beyond the Arc, Friday edition, a little bit shorter show today. Do you have any closing thoughts on Philly before we Team of the Night this thing, Bakken?
No.
Brad Bakken?
There's nothing else they got to shut it down. There's nothing else to say.
All right. Yeah. Who is your Team of the Night?
The Pacers, because it's like the quietest thing in the league right now, but they're up to a top 4 seed. If Halliburton is playing better, Siakam was a deserving all-star. This is a team that we saw last year beat the Bucks. I think they beat the Bucks 5 times, and this is when was it last year? Yeah, last year's they were in the NBA Cup. Yeah, and they were beating all the top teams.
And the conference finals last year.
Conference finals. Now, they've been interesting to me all year because when this season started, I saw them as a potential 2021 Hawks team where they make a very circumstantial conference finals run. Atlanta made that run because the Knicks were overseeded. They weren't as good as their seed. And then they played the Sixers in the midst of a complete fall apart. So it's like they end up in the conference finals. Trae Young catches a heater, but they weren't really a conference finals team. And then they didn't go out and do anything. They kept John Collins. They re-signed Nate McMillan. They didn't go out and build on that. They thought they were all of a sudden good enough. And that was sort of a mirage. And I thought the Pacers were a potential victim of that same thinking. We made the conference finals, but we're not really a conference finals team. By the end of that Knicks series, they're playing people out of the stands. So you're not really a conference finals team. And they didn't really add that much. And so it's like, I thought they were going to be like a play-in team and they were going to really fall from this conference finals high they were on. And very quietly, Halliburton was terrible to begin the season. His road home splits were like almost hard to believe, but here they are, top 4 seed. And right now they would get Milwaukee in a first round series. They can win that series. And I would be very, very interested if seeds held right now. I would be very interested in an Indiana-Cleveland second round series. I don't think Cleveland would necessarily waltz through that. And all of a sudden, are the Pacers a conference finals team again? They're very interesting to me.
Let me just add a piece of information to that because they might be. They are, since January 1st, a top 7 offense and defense in the NBA. And if you're a top 10 in both, that's usually a metric and a standard for you're good enough to make the kind of run you're talking. They're good, man. They had a slow start and they're quietly playing great basketball.
Nembhard's big to watch. What's really interesting about the Pacers, their defensive rating is they're like, I think an average defensive team, 16, 17, something like that, which is actually an improvement.
Over the season, but not over the last,
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But if you put Nembhard and Siakam on the court together, these guys can really defend on the perimeter. Dude, their defensive rating, that's a fairly small sample. It's like 800 possessions, but 105 defensive rating, which is short of only OKC's top-ranked defense in the league. Now, that doesn't mean they're like a good defense, but it means they have perimeter options to really dog the ball and really screw up what you're trying to do offensively in the playoffs. And that matters. So if Halliburton gets it going, that again,
I love them against Milwaukee. Yeah. They've got their number and I'm selling all the Bucks stock. Mine is the Spurs, a moral victory. De'Aaron Fox was great. They played. Man, the Suns just are bad, aren't they?
Ugh.
The Suns just suck.
And now on top of them not being good for basketball reasons, the spirit is just like Bradley Beal knows that he wanted to get rid of him. Kevin Durant's probably getting traded in the offseason. It's like, the whole thing is kaput.
That's why I think Philly's the worst sort of most disappointing team in the NBA, but the Suns are
right. They're
right.
Their
disappointing stretches back a couple seasons. Yeah.
Right
all right. We're gonna do a short one because it's Friday. I'm supposed to go to a concert tonight for my birthday with my wife and my kid, Nathaniel Rateliff. Do you know Nathaniel Rateliff? Amazing.
No.
Amazing. I'm trying to think if I can get out of it. I don't feel great, Brad. I'm not sure if I can. But either way, have a great weekend. Brad and I will be back next Friday. John and I will be back on Monday. Remember, I didn't tell you to do this, but subscribe, like, if you're watching on YouTube, which you can do live every day. Usually it's at noon Eastern. We did it at 1 Eastern today. You can push the little bell, the little notification button. It'll tell you whenever we're doing our thing. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for listening. On behalf of Brad Bakken, I'm Bill Reiter. We'll see you back here on Monday.